Assalamualaikum guys, this is Aamna, you're watching AHI. Usually हम करते हैं Fashion Fortnightly, Meet the Muse, designer profiles और मुख्तलिफ किस्म की entertaining और बहुत ही gossip ridden तो खैर मैं नहीं कहूँगी, but a lot of fun conversations. This is not going to be a fun conversation, but it's a very important conversation. My friend is visiting from the US and आपको थोड़ा सा मैं brief दे दूँ कि पिछले 30 साल से वो मेरी दोस्त हैं और जब हम बड़े हो रहे थे तो of course we never knew कि हम बड़े होके क्या करेंगे अपनी ज़िंदगी के साथ लेकिन we all chose our paths and our paths chose us. Her path has been extremely significant in the sense that she trained to be, I will read it because I don't want to make a mistake, a board certified behavior analyst for children with special needs, especially children who are autistic. It's a word that we are now familiar with, children who have autism. लेकिन इसका क्या मतलब है, ऑटिज़म क्या है, जो बच्चे ऑटिस्टिक होते हैं वो कौन हैं और कैसे आइडेंटिफाई किया जाए. ये मैं जो विज़िट कर रही थी आज इस हफ्ते तो मैंने सोचा कि इनको पकड़ा जाए और इस पे बात की जाए because I'm sure that a lot of you have questions and are curious about the subject and I don't think there's anybody who can talk about it better than her. So मेहरुन्निसा खान इनका नाम है और ये इनको हम मेहर कहते हैं और मेहर you are on AHI, you're on my channel.
I know, I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
We had been discussing this for such a long time that, autism is a word. और हम जब ड्रामे खास तौर पर जब देखते हैं तो हम कहते हैं अच्छा ये फलाना कैरेक्टर जो है इसको ऑटिस्टिक है तो हम मेहर को पूछते हैं कि ऑटिस्टिक है तो नहीं पता चलता कि है कि नहीं है whatever. But there are so many questions in my head and I'm sure people who are watching maybe they know a child with special needs or they have a child or there's somebody in the family and the purpose of this show is to educate people as much as we can through conversation and then to lead to them asking questions or agar this resonates with them and they understand what we're saying then I would hope that there will be a lot of comments that I would like you to respond to and all of that. So सबसे पहले हमारी बैकग्राउंड तो ये कि हम एक दूसरे को 30 साल से जानते हैं और हम कॉलेज में इकट्ठे थे. ऐसा ही है ना?
ऐसा ही
है और ऐसे नहीं थे उस वक्त मगर ऐसे ही थे.
ऐसे नहीं भी थे भी हाँ
थे भी थे और ऐसे भी हम बहुत फन लोग हैं. हम बहुत फन लोग हैं और हमारी बहुत सीरियस लेकिन पर्पस है जिंदगी में. तो you are a BCBA. Is that what they say?
Yes,
you're a BCBA, which means you're a board certified behavior analyst.
Yes.
And you've been working with children who are on the spectrum for autism for the last like 20 years?
12 to 15 years. I've been working exclusively with them.
Right.
But I've been in the US for 25 years and I've worked in the private school system and in the public school system.
Right.
But my area of interest has been autism.
Achha, now sabse pehle, I'm sure everybody would want to ask you, how do you get into this field?
Absolutely by accident. So I used to be a substitute teacher for my children's school.
Okay.
And because the way public school systems are now set up, you have your self-contained autism classrooms in which there are 6 students at a time and you have a special education teacher. It is a very difficult job. Working with these children is physically and emotionally very demanding. So those teachers would often take off and as a substitute, I would be brought in to replace them for the day.
Okay.
And when I would go in, first I used to be intimidated, but then I started working with these children and I realized that I actually work with them really well. I'm able to establish a rapport with them. I'm able to, carry out the programs. I'm understanding a little bit. That's where I heard the term autism first.
And एक second, and these children were integrated in regular classrooms?
No, so what happens is the children were in the self-contained, depending on the diagnosis and the classification, the children are put in the self-contained classroom, which means that the autism students, they are assigned to a regular education, general education classroom, but their learning takes place in a self-contained environment.
Okay.
Because their learning is different from the other kids, from the general education kids.
Okay.
So once I learned about the term autism, and I was extremely lucky to be in contact and to be supervised and to work next to very, very dedicated and professional people. And so I went back to school and I got my BSc in early childhood education. Then I went back and got a master's in teaching special education. Then I went and got my applied behavior analysis coursework done. I found myself a fantastic supervisor. I worked with him under supervision for 1,500 hours, which included practical work, which included discussing, autism and all its different nuances, treatments, therapies, all of that. Then I sent my application to the board. My application got approved. I took the exam, and alhamdulillah, I passed on the first try.
Yeah, I remember when you were studying for the
Yes,
exam.
you all were with me through that journey,
Yeah.
and supporting me and praying for me through that journey. And I passed in October of last year and finally got myself certified. So I was on this journey for about 7 years
Right.
of studying and taking exams and quizzes, and you know how studying is.
Yeah.
So that's how my interest in autism, that's where I became interested, because I saw these children, and coming from a place like Pakistan where children like these were isolated in homes
Yeah.
and were not, brought to family events or brought to social functions, I realized that these children in a place like the US are members of society, are integrated into society, they have the right to an education just like a typical child.
Yeah.
So all these revelations were just propelled my journey towards that, because I made up my mind that this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to help whoever I can.
Right.
So that was the beginning of my journey.
That was the beginning of your journey, and you've worked now how many years?
So I was in that school for over 12 years.
Over 12 years.
Over 12 years I worked
Right.
in that environment.
Right.
Yeah.
So interestingly, in the last 1 year, you've also been working with parents in Pakistan.
Yes.
So ये बड़ी interesting conversation रहेगी कि क्या फ़र्क है दोनों की,
Yes.
the way these children are dealt with or managed.
Yes. Perceived.
Perceived.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. तो सबसे पहली चीज़ तो ये है कि महर के बहुत कम लोगों को समझ है इस चीज़ की. What is autism?
So autism is, to put it in terms that people generally understand, it's a developmental delay. It's a processing delay.
Okay.
It's a developmental disability. So children and autism is a spectrum. So it's not a pinpoint diagnosis, and a spectrum means that it can go from here all the way to there.
Right.
And the child can lie anywhere on the spectrum. And the therapy options and treatment options are developed according to where that child is on the spectrum.
Right.
You and I are what we would be called typically developing people.
We're not using the word normal.
We do not. First of all, yes, thank you for bringing that up. We do not use the word normal and abnormal anymore. Yeah. There is no such thing as normal and abnormal.
Right.
This is my normal. That is your normal. It differs.
Yeah.
Right. We use the words typically developing and non-typically. Typically developing means children who hit medical milestones as identified by the medical community. कि 12 साल की उम्र तक बच्चा ये करेगा, 12 महीने तक ये करेगा, 18 महीने तक ये करेगा, 36 महीने तक ये करेगा. You and I hit those goals. Our friends, our ASD population did not hit those goals. So they are not typically developing. It doesn't mean that they will not develop mentally, emotionally, physically. They will develop, just differently.
Delayed.
Just delayed.
Right.
Differently. So the way we have to help them and facilitate that development is different.
So what are the signs you look out for? बहुत से लोग ये कहते हैं कि ये तो वो चीज़ है, ठीक हो जाएगा, 5 साल तक सही हो जाएगा हमारा बच्चा ये वो. What are the signs to look out for in a child? How early can it be detected?
Yes.
And how should parents be vigilant?
So sometimes the doctors are able to diagnose autism because the signs are very, very prevalent in a child, in an infant. But typically it is diagnosed by the age of 3.
Okay.
Because by the age of 3, we expect to see a lot of language growth, a lot of physical growth, a lot of social growth. And if we don't see that, if we don't see those signs, then the pediatrician will recommend the child to go for an autism diagnosis. So there is no test for it. There is no medical test. There's no blood test, nothing for it. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children should be screened for developmental delays at 9 months, 18 months, and 36 months, and 30 months. And for early detection for ASD, for specific ASD screening at 18 months and 24 months, because we see a burst of growth during that time.
Right.
The reason for this is because early detection is everything.
Okay.
And just if we have early detection of a disease, doctors can treat it differently, less aggressively. If we have early detection of autism, then our therapies can be different and less aggressive.
This is not a disease.
And very, very significant.
Yeah.
Autism is not a disease. It is a disorder. Diseases can be cured. Disorders cannot be cured. They can be managed.
Right.
So when people in Pakistan, I hear people saying, मेरा बच्चे को autism था और अब वो देखे अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह बिल्कुल ठीक हो गया. There's a very significant reason for that, and that is misdiagnosis. Diagnosing autism is extremely tricky, and it takes a person with a lot of experience and supervised experience and practice to diagnose autism.
Okay.
which we'll get into later.
Okay.
But
what are the telltale signs or the red
telltale
flags?
signs. So telltale signs are that by 9 to 10 months your child is not responding to their name.
Okay.
There's no interaction by 12 months. Like आप बच्चे को कहें कि bye bye कर दो, वो नहीं कर रहा. By 12 months he's not doing that. Lack of shared interest, that the child is playing with toys but he doesn't show the toy to you or to anybody else around him. There's no pointing by 18 months. There's no peer interaction or initiation by 3 years. यानी कि वो बच्चा दोस्तों से नहीं खेल रहा, किसी को जाके ये नहीं कह रहा कि चलो मेरे साथ खेलो. There's no pretend play. For example, एक टॉय बनाना पड़ा है, वो बच्चा उठा के उसको फोन नहीं बनाएगा. We see pretend play in children, but in children on the ASD students we don't. There's trouble with transitioning. कि बच्चे को कहना है कि अब घर जाने का वक्त हो गया है, and the child is not able to handle it, and what people call meltdowns or tantrums happen. There's focus on repetitive movements, like fans. A lot of these children love fans. A lot of them love wheels. They love that repetitive movement. They rock their body. We see this a lot. There's a lot of stimming, we call this, the body rocking, or hand flapping, and your child is just sitting there and doing hand flapping. Or your child is spinning in circles. We see this a lot in ASD students. It's just that repetitive behavior.
There's comfort in repetition.
Maybe there's comfort in repetition, but that's the repetitive behavior. They line up toys in the same order. And I want to say this is something that children do. Any child who does that does not mean that you need an ASD diagnosis. But if you see a child lining up the toys in a pattern, so always the red has to be first, the blue has to be second, the green has to be third, and the yellow has to be fourth, and then repeating that pattern, that would be a red flag for you. Delayed language. Obviously, if there's no interaction, there's no social interaction, there's going to be delayed language. Hyperactivity. Hyperactivity is something we see, and lack of self-regulation. They are unable to regulate their emotions. They'll either be excessively happy or they'll be excessively sad.
Right.
So there's no self-regulation. So these are your telltale signs of autism that the parents should be on the lookout for. And dusra, I would like to say that in Pakistan, people use these terms very lightly.
Which terms?
People just say, oh, ये इसको autism होगा, ये schizophrenia है, इसको तो bipolar disorder है. These are medical conditions. These are disabilities. These are challenges that people face in their lives.
Let's not throw these words around.
Please don't use these words loosely. Don't use these words unless you're a medical or a professional of some sort. Please don't label people so ignorantly. We have to respect all kinds of people, in society. It's not just about respecting your Muslims and your Christians. It's about respecting every person who lives. Individuals.
We have some little respect for people. And what we were discussing before we came on record, dignity.
Absolutely.
Giving every individual dignity.
Every person on this planet has a right to lead a dignified life to the greatest extent possible.
So you've interacted with various parents now in Pakistan. What are the biggest challenges you see that people have or face living in Pakistan with dealing with children who are on the spectrum?
So what I say, and this has been really the best explanation that I've been able to come up with, that Pakistan in 2022 is where the USA was in the 1970s.
Okay.
So in the 1970s, parents started fighting for their children's right to an education, a public education. Parents started fighting for for the labels to be changed. Parents started fighting for integration into society for their children, right? Pakistan is there right now, at that stage right now. In Pakistan, the challenges I feel that parents face is, first of all, lack of education on the part of the parents. They don't know what autism means. The doctor has diagnosed it or somebody has said it to them. Completely lost. It's a new word. It's a whole new world. Nobody's prepared for it. Joint family systems where the parents understand, but the older people in the family or extended family don't understand. And blaming the mother,
the
or blaming the father.
क्या है? Okay, ये तो
नहीं, ये ठीक हो जाएगा, बस इसको नॉर्मल रखो, बस इसकी फिक्र ना करो, ठीक हो जाएगा. इसके मामू ने भी 10 साल तक बात नहीं की थी, या इसके फलाने के भी कोई दोस्त नहीं होते थे, so it's okay. इसको तुम ना ज्यादा अटेंशन ना दो, इसको ये ना करो. So a lot of misdirection, and again coming from people who don't know what they're saying. So अब यहाँ पे ये कहना बहुत मुश्किल है कि अगर if you don't know something, be quiet. या पाकिस्तान में नहीं लोगों को समझा सकते. But if you really don't know, then just be supportive of the parents. And if you can talk to people and find out the name of a a good therapist or good doctor, उस
Right.
तरह उनकी help करें,
Right.
practically उनकी help करें, but
Right.
no, the blaming doesn't help anyone.
No.
This is the issue. Let's move
No,
forward.
again, the blaming से एक सवाल ये निकलता है that is there any reason for children to be born with autism?
So there is massive research going on all over the world
Right.
as to why there's an increase. Now the increase is we have one girl. The ratio is 1 to 4 for girls and boys.
Strange. Why is that?
We don't know.
We don't know.
And that's what we're trying to find out. We're trying to research. Okay, why is it that 4 boys versus 1 girl have autism? One of the reasons is that because autism presents very differently in boys and girls.
Okay.
So there's a famous quote that we go by, and that is that if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. That's how individual it is.
Yeah, no two people are alike.
No two people are alike. So when parents, in their goodwill are trying to help other parents, and they say on social media, hey, my child on ASD, I did this and this worked, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for your
The other
child
person as
also.
well, right.
That's why you need to work with professionals, trained professionals. To find out what works best for your child, right? So autism is very, very individual, and autism is more prevalent in boys than in girls. And because of the rising rates of autism, we are now, the medical community, the scientific community is trying to find out why that is happening.
Right.
There was a time when it was attributed to vaccines. There was a time it was attributed to food. अभी भी research हो रही है food के ऊपर भी, the processed food and the plastic in our food and all of that. But as of right now, what can be said with absolute certainty is that autism is hereditary.
Hereditary.
And
right.
when I say that, people get shocked, and then I point out to them that the fact that it was given a name in 1911 doesn't mean it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So think back about your ancestors. We all have family members in our society who are either obsessed with something or have no social skills, and we hear ये नहीं किसी से बात करता, इसको नहीं अच्छा लगता, इसके दोस्त नहीं बनते, इसको दावतों पे जाना अच्छा नहीं लगता, ये नहीं शादियों पे जाता. ये we hear these things.
Yeah.
These are lack of social skills.
Yeah.
So your first indicator is your lack of social skills. Your lack of social skills is your biggest indicator of an ASD diagnosis. Yeah.
But complex है बहुत. I mean, human mind ही इतना complex है.
Yeah,
और फिर आप human mind को social उसमें डाल दें एक inadequate system में, जहाँ पे किसी चीज़ की understanding नहीं है, और खासतौर पे बच्चों की तो बिल्कुल भी understanding नहीं है.
Yeah.
So I think it's a challenge for the parents as well, but also challenge for the child, for the individual.
Absolutely.
और हम when you work with children with autism, what are the goals? अब ये तो नहीं है कि again we're not using the word normal, but ये तो नहीं है कि बच्चा जो है ये normal हो जाएगा.
So the goals, when parents come to me and they say कि जी हम चाहते हैं कि mainstream, people here call it mainstream, I call it a general education school. बच्चा mainstream हो जाए, बच्चा mainstream हो जाए. देखिए mainstream
स्कूल
में चला जाए. School में जाना, to navigate through, and we've been to school. School is a very tough place, right? And if you are in any way, shape or form different from your peers, you become a target of bullying. You become a target for people easily. And children can be very aggressive when it comes to bullying, right? Parents don't want their children interacting with a child who either has a diagnosis or is, on the spectrum in this way. So mainstream में आप एक बच्चे को डाल दें, schooling के लिए, learning के लिए, there are prerequisite skills. You need to stay in your seat. If you have a child who's not sitting in their seat and running away, they're going to A, cause disruption. B, their own learning is not going to happen because they're not sitting down. If you have a child who doesn't know how to play with friends, like peer interaction, peer initiation, that child is going to be overwhelmed in an environment. He's going to be alone in that environment. So we cannot make, बेशक बच्चे ABC पूरी मुझे सुना देते हैं, 1, 2, 3 उनको सारी आती है, but not functionally. Right? Just because the child academically एक level पे पहुंच गया है, school is not just about academics, na? School is a social learning environment.
Absolutely.
So I have to make sure that I prepare the child with these prerequisite skills first before we put them in that environment. Exactly, in-seat behavior, asking for help, raising your hand, self-feeding, going to the bathroom. Self-feeding, bathroom, toileting skills, then, making friends, playing with friends, parallel play, pretend play, social cues, that if a friend is sitting on a swing and, says push me, that you push the friend, things like that. No aggression, using functional communication instead of engaging in aggression. So a lot of children on the spectrum tend to be very aggressive because that is the way they communicate. They do not know how to communicate. So if they want something and some other child has it, they will just go and try and grab it from them. If they want the swing and some other child is on it, they'll push that child down. If they want something and the mother is not listening, or mother is not attentive to them, they'll go and hit the mother or the father or whoever is working with the child. They tend to be very aggressive. I cannot put that child in a regular school because he may not, especially here because यहाँ पे support staff नहीं होता, यहाँ पे teachers को understanding नहीं होती, यहाँ पे academics are very very heavy. The teachers though are just trying to get the academic coursework covered, and then he may harm some other child, or some other child may harm him. So that's why I try and tell parents that we'll try. I just mainstreamed a child, but because that child was ready. So it has to be, I have to make that judgment call. It's a tough judgment call to make. It's a tough judgment call, but I need the parents' cooperation. Goal setting for a child on the spectrum would have academic goals, but would also have behavioral goals. So I will teach a child to, we call that manding, to ask for what he wants. Instead of grabbing it, please give me, I want, mujhe chahiye. I will teach them a few different ways to say that. Instead of saying कि सिर्फ बच्चा कहे give me, this is not a parrot. This is a child. I don't always say give me when I want something. कभी मैं कहती हूँ मुझे दे दें, कभी मैं कहती हूँ मुझे चाहिए, कभी मैं कहती हूँ please give me, right? कभी मैं कहती हूँ can I please have that? So I also teach children 2 or 3 different ways of asking for things. Right. So हमारे the kids I work with, हमारे बच्चों के academic goals भी होते हैं और behavioral goals भी होते हैं. Like waiting. A lot of these kids, they elope, meaning that they don't stay in one place. So the parents can't take them anywhere in public because the child will run.
भाग जाते हैं.
So we have a whole waiting protocol. I teach the child how to wait. So I give the SD wait here. And I've taught the child how to wait. Or, stay here. Or walk next to me. We also did a whole program, ran a protocol where the child was taught how to walk next to an adult. So, and the way we teach is what is my area of, is what I do, is called applied behavior analysis. It's called ABA. It's a science of behavior. It's a scientific field. It's a science of behavior. Behavior is what we all do. Right. Every living organism has behavior. Right? Behavior is anything that we do. Blinking eyes is a behavior. Clapping hands, sitting down, standing up, walking next to somebody, asking for things. These are all behaviors. And ABA has identified 4 reasons for behavior.
Okay.
So the acronym for that is SEAT. Okay. So your one, and these are not in any order, these are just in random order. S is for sensory. Okay. So you see a lot of people engaging in sensory behavior, like shaking their leg, doing this with their fingers, clicking a pen, twirling their hair. So these are all behaviors that we engage in for sensory satisfaction. We don't need anybody else to be in our environment. We can engage in these behaviors when we are on our own, right? Some behavior, sensory behavior, is socially acceptable, like the ones I mentioned. Some are not. So for a child to be rocking back and forth, this is an unacceptable stim. Right. But for a person to sit and shake their leg, also a stim, repetitive behavior, is a socially acceptable behavior. Right. So we, there's different things that society is accepting now and different things that they are not. Now, because ASD, we are still learning so much about it, the movement constantly changes and the way we see ASD constantly changes. Now, the ASD professionals and people in ABA are saying that we do not need to stop a child from stimming. The stimming brings the child, gives the child peace or relief. It's his way of, so we teach them and we do this with behavior, also replacement behavior, or we assign times or places where the child can stim, right? Right. So, okay, don't stim when you're in a restaurant. We'll teach them alternative behavior in a restaurant. But if the child is at home and he's stimming for a few minutes and that's calming him down and bringing him peace, why should I take that away from him? Yeah. Right? So now the movement used to be, the focus used to be on eye contact. The child has to make eye contact, Till we realize, people, who've been in the profession much longer than I, that when you and I talk, we do not constantly look into each other's eyes for the duration of the conversation, right? So why should we expect these children to do that? So now what we do is orient to speaker. And that's for safety reasons. If the child is somewhere and the mother calls the child's name, the child should turn around and follow the voice. So now that movement has changed to that.
Right.
So S is your sensory. E is your escape. So we engage in behaviors to escape unpleasant or aversive situations. A child who is in a classroom and the teacher passes out a test and the child looks and says, this is a tough test, I'm not going to make it. He's going to either, he'll throw the paper on the floor, he'll poke the friend sitting next to him with a pencil, and the teacher will say, leave my classroom, go to the principal's office. Guess what happened? The child won.
Yeah.
Because if the purpose of his behavior was escape, he successfully escaped an aversive situation, right? So that's your E. Your A is attention. One of the reasons we engage in behavior is for attention, and that is the behavior, that is the reason that is misused the most, because it's very easy. Oh, he's doing it for attention. He's doing it for attention. Isko attention na do, ye theek ho jayega. Aadat ban jayegi, ye theek ho jayega. So unless we know for sure, and there's a way we find out for sure the reason for the behavior. We don't just look and say, oh, this must be for it. We have what we call a FBA, a functional behavior assessment, that we do for that. So, but one of your reasons is attention. And your T is tangible. Tangible means to have access to something. So if you want the iPad, or if you want a pair of shoes, or like I, want a pair of shoes.
All the time.
All the time. So I will engage in behaviors that will get me a pair of shoes, right? Things like that. So these are our 4 reasons for behavior. SEAT is the acronym we use. When a child is unable to communicate effectively, functionally, either vocally or through another means, the child but the child has to is engaging in behavior for a reason. My job is to find out why the child is doing this. I can't find out by asking the parents. I can never ask somebody, why are you doing this? Maybe the child is not going to tell me. Maybe the child will tell me. But if the child is unable to tell me, I will find out why he's doing that. And then once I know why he's doing that, I will teach him what we call replacement behaviors. If the child is engaging in a behavior, in aggression, for example, you have something and the child wants it, and the child will just go over. Now he wants it. He doesn't care that you have it. He's not processing that part of the environment. He's just processing that he wants it. He will go. He will either snatch it from you. He will hit you. He will do something, and he's focused on gaining access to that. My job is then to teach him how to ask for it.
Right.
I will either teach him to ask for it vocally, or I will use what we call PECS. It's called a picture exchange communication system, where the child exchanges pictures with a communication partner to get what they want. Now, that doesn't mean that we are not using speech. We are always using speech with PECS. What that does is, it's a very, very simple way to teach the child a communication strategy without engaging in aggression.
Meher, now this all is very technical, and of course somebody who's trained to do it and to handle it is competent. But how does the average parent deal with it?
That's the thing.
I mean, when you have a child who's growing up with autism, आप क्या करें? घर के अंदर आप क्या करें? What do you need to look out for that the child is safe? सबसे बड़ी तो safety की चीज़ है ना? कि दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि उसको एक ऐसा environment मिले जहाँ पे वो cope कर सके अपने disabilities के साथ, और communicate कर सके, और सबसे बड़ी चीज़ safety उसकी रहे. आपको ये नहीं पता कि जो
and safety for others in his environment.
Exactly, safety for others as well, for siblings or for pets or for just other people. So what can a household do to protect and to raise a child who's on the spectrum?
So when you start seeing red flags as parents, you start seeing some red flags. Your first step should be to finalize if the child needs an assessment.
Okay.
So autism, being as complicated as it is, we do not ever just do one assessment and say, oh, the child is on the spectrum. We call that a battery of assessments, meaning we do multiple assessments. One of the most popular ones across the world is the ADOS. It's the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. Your second one, another one is the ADIR, which is your Autism Diagnostic Interview. And another one that's very popular is CARS, which is the Childhood Autism Rating Scale. Now, the interview is basically interview questions. The other two are, they have numeric ratings for the behaviors that we see. Un behaviors ka then you calculate a score. These assessments are difficult. They are not easy to. You need a lot of practice. You need a lot of supervised time to learn how to carry out because one number here or there can define the diagnosis, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing in Pakistan is that I do not know who to send the child to for an assessment. I'm trained for the assessment for ADOS. I have my training, but I did not have sufficient supervision. So it would be unethical of me. I can call the parents and tell them, yeah, I'll do the ADOS. It would be unethical of me because this is a child's life that I'm talking about. People come and tell me कि जी इसकी हमने assessment फलाने से कराई थी उस वक्त autism आया था अब एक और जगह कराई है तो नहीं आया autism. One of you is not doing your job properly. This is a child's life, right? So I tell parents that once you are able to have a diagnosis, and you know the thing that I feel like I really need to say here is that India में fantastic diagnostic services होती हैं.
हो रही हैं.
Yes. पाकिस्तान में क्यों नहीं हो रही? यहाँ पे I even approached one of the big lab services in Pakistan. They contacted me, approached me, somehow we connected, and they wanted to open a school. And I said to them, don't open a school, open a diagnostics facility. Because that's what is needed here. Train people, pay for people to get trained in these diagnostic assessments, and open a facility where parents can bring their child and get a reliable diagnosis, because that's the first step, right? So after you have your diagnosis, by some miracle you have a a reliable diagnosis, then you seek out a therapist. So the therapist, from according to the Board of Behavior Analysis, there's also another international certifying board, but the one I'm associated with is that one. So you have your RBT, which is called a Registered Behavior Technician. That's the first step. I was an RBT before. It took me 6 months to do the coursework, and I was supervised, and then I did my exam and I passed that exam. यहाँ पे हर वक्त कोई advertisement चल रही होती है, somebody is offering the RBT training for 40,000 rupees or 50% discount 20,000 rupees. 2 दिन में training करा के, 4 दिन में 5 दिन में training करा के, for people who don't know these terms, the terminology, the language, वो training करके people test भी नहीं लेते हैं, उनको वो एक certificate of attendance दे देते हैं. ना वो टेस्ट लेते हैं. मेरे पास रेज्यूमेज आते हैं RBT trained. I'm like, what is that? There is no such thing. RBT trained is nothing unless you take the exam and you are certified.
And you put in the hours.
Yeah, and you've put in the hours. Without training, आप लोगों के बच्चों के साथ, and especially kids who need such specialized help, आप क्या कर, what are you trying to do? So things like that, and you can tell that I'm extremely aggravated right now just even talking about it. It's unfair and it's unethical. So यहाँ पाकिस्तान में लोगों ने centers बहुत खोले हुए हैं. फलाना autism
ठीक है, लेकिन हम वापस जाते हैं. एक पहली चीज़ है diagnosis करना. सेकंड चीज क्या है? घर में क्या माइलस्टोन्स क्या हैं जो आपको अचीव करने हैं?
डायग्नोसिस के बाद आपने थेरेपिस्ट ढूंढना है ना. एंड द रीजन आई टॉक्ड अबाउट द आरबीटी वाज बिकॉज़ यहाँ पे लोगों ने जो सेंटर्स खोले हुए हैं, ठीक है, वहां पे आरबीटी ट्रेंड लोग बैठे हुए हैं, और उनसे आप पूछते हैं ना, बिकॉज़ आई कॉल सेंटर्स अप माई सेल्फ pretending that I need information. Highly qualified staff. What does that mean? Give me a quantify that. Highly qualified, आपकी क्या, आपने मास्टर्स किया हुआ, आपने बैचलर्स किया हुआ है, हाईली ट्रेंड, इतने साल की ट्रेनिंग है. मुझे अब समझ आ गई है कि यहाँ तो पाकिस्तान में 4 दिन की ट्रेनिंग में आप हाईली ट्रेंड कह देते हैं. मैं 15 साल की ट्रेनिंग लेके आई हूँ, मैं अपने आप को भी हाईली ट्रेंड नहीं कहती. आप लोग कैसे कह रहे हैं अपने आप को? बट चलो, always ask for the therapist's qualifications. If the therapist is qualified, उसकी कोई डिग्री होगी जो कि एक सर्टिफिकेट में होगी. अगर आपकी किसी सर्टिफाइंग बोर्ड के साथ एसोसिएशन है, आपका एक नंबर असाइंड होगा जो कि स्पेसिफिकली आपका होगा. अब मेरे जो नंबर्स हैं, anyone can go on the behavior analysis board website, type in my name and it will come up that I am certified. When was I certified? My details will come up. Right? We need that kind of verification. दूसरा, पाकिस्तान में, so then you find a therapist.
ठीक है.
Please don't fall for therapists who say highly qualified, this, that, and the other.
Yeah, it's not quantifiable.
The other thing, please don't fall for fad treatments. We call them fad treatments. ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, is the only scientifically proven research-based therapy that has worked for children on the spectrum. It is based on 3 principles: reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. And from those 3 principles stems everything that we do in ABA.
Okay.
We use strategies like modeling. We use, for reinforcement, positive reinforcement. Most of the focus is on positive reinforcement. There's also negative reinforcement, which is a beautiful thing. People don't understand what it is. I want to quickly tell you what it is. Negative reinforcement means Positive means something is added to the environment, which increases behavior. Negative means something is removed from the environment that increases behavior.
Okay.
I know it sounds it also took me a while to figure it out. But we engage in this during our every day of our life. So think about it. Positive reinforcement, the strongest positive reinforcement is social praise. When you do something and somebody praises you for it, especially if that somebody is a significant person in your life, like a boss or a spouse or your child or whoever you did something for, you will repeat that behavior if social reinforcement is reinforcing for you. Okay? Social praise is reinforcing for you. Negative reinforcement, you buy a new pair of shoes. I keep going back to shoes because shoes are what I love. But if you buy a new pair of shoes and you put your foot in the shoe and the shoe starts pinching you at the back, what do? You take it off. That's a negative reinforcement. How? The pinch was aversive to me. I took it off, the pinch is gone. Now, in the future, I know that anytime my shoe hurts me, I take it off.
Okay.
Right? So that's negative reinforcement. Same thing you have with punishment. Punishment, you have positive punishment when something is added, which is like a reprimand. Like,
Meher, you're getting too technical. For the layman, parents.
So parents
to child behavior, like very zaruri cheez humne kahi. Before we're talking that these children are very vulnerable.
Yes.
Especially to abuse.
Yes.
So how vigilant should the parents be?
अच्छा ठीक है, आपने diagnosis हो गया, आपने therapist ढूंढ लिया, आपने goals identify कर लिए. Please also identify behavior goals. Please don't keep focusing on academics. Please focus on functional communication. Please focus on dignity, teaching the child how to dress themselves, toileting skills, self-care skills.
I mean, you shared with me that the parents who could come in and say कि जूता बंद करने की जरूरत नहीं, मेड कर देगी.
ये मुझे बहुत यहाँ के पेरेंट्स
बिस्तर नहीं बनवाने की जरूरत. 15-year-old child not being able to.
Exactly. So my purpose as a behavior analyst is to teach the child skills that he needs to lead a dignified life. ठीक है?
And अकेले
or even with support, but a dignified life. Even if there's a maid present, no 15-16-year-old should be taken to the bathroom. Unless there's khuda na khasta physical disability that prevents them. Right? So our goal is to ensure that these children can lead dignified lives to the greatest extent possible.
Can they work?
Yes, they can work. देखें, जरूरी नहीं है कि आपका बच्चा अफसर बने, but your child can work in a grocery store bagging groceries. Your child can work in a restaurant being the host. And now we are seeing that integration across the US.
So give me some examples of your students who have actually gone ahead.
Yes, so one of them works in a bakery now. Because usko the child loved to draw. And again, so what we do is we try and find the child's strengths. Instead of this culture tends to focus very much on weaknesses in a person. In the US, we focus on the strengths of the child, right? So you focus on the child. This is a girl who loved to draw. She liked to draw, and isko ye stress ball ko squeeze karna. Now, what is that stress ball squeezing? An icing thing, right? Same, functional. She's getting the squeeze, the sensory out of that. Working in a bakery. One of my children, who was a boy, who was actually one of the first children I worked with, knitting. He knits scarves and hats. So because uski fingers mein na, he would stim with his fingers. And some fantastic therapist somewhere, God bless whoever did this, put knitting needles in his hand, and that child now knits. So he's getting that. So the behavior, the sensory component of the behavior is being fulfilled in a functional way. Right?
And Marsha, क्योंकि जरा open minded है, कोई मजाक नहीं उसका उड़ा रहा कि oh, there's no backlash. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Boy knitting.
Yes, absolutely. Recipes, cutting, things like that. I mean, of course, in a safe way. So these children can do a lot of things. And just वहाँ पे we see आप store के अंदर जाएं, और store greeters are usually children with some disability. You have your Down syndrome students, and they're all being integrated into society. And now a lot of companies have a quota of disability employees that they have to fulfill. So it's beautiful seeing all that happen, and obviously the hope is that will also happen in Pakistan. But Abhi, like I said, Pakistan is in the 1970s. This fight has just started in Pakistan. This movement has just started.
So this is an endless discussion, like you said. We could go on about this forever
and ever. About it for,
but this was just to touch upon the basics, and just to open the discussion to how people are feeling about it.
And before we close, I don't even know what time it is. But before we close, I want to go back to what we were discussing privately before. These kids, especially the kids who are non-vocal and not able to tell you, these kids across the world are extremely vulnerable to abuse.
Right.
So please, this is my appeal to parents. If you have a child who is dependent on you and not able to vocalize, please, if somebody comes to your house and you tell the child, uncle ki godi mein baitho, and the child resists, please listen to your child. Please do not force your children to be alone with people that they are uncomfortable with. Any sign of discomfort, please do not send your children alone in cars with people. They are vulnerable to abuse that you cannot even imagine, because the abuser knows that they will not be able to tell you what happened. But even without communication, you will see behaviors like the child will start to hide. The child will, sleep for extended periods, or the child will, any kind of behavior that prevents him from being in that situation again, the child will engage in. So please, please be extra careful with these children. Protect all your children. And please remember that people who harm children live among us. They are not in books and fairy tales. They live among us. So please protect your children. Protect these children even more. And educate yourself. We live in a digital world. Please do not think that you do not have access to education. Just be careful. Don't ask Google Chacha. Like I said,
Dr. Google.
Don't ask Google Chacha, Dr. Google. Go to reputable websites, like the websites that end in .org or .gov. Do not get your information from parenting magazines. Do not get your information from .com websites. And please, again, remember, what works for one child may not work for you. So don't count on that.
Right. Just educate yourself.
Find the best possible therapist that you can. Get your parent training. Get your training done. The best therapists for a child are the parents. Best therapists. So learn how to do that.
And you also give time to the parents and how to deal with it.
Yes, absolutely. I do. So part of if a child comes to me and I work with the child one-on-one or in a small group, part of that is, my door is always open. The parents walk in and out as they please. I don't have cameras on my premises because, even with cameras, children are getting hurt and hit and abused. I don't have cameras. I have an open door. Everything is videotaped. My parents would get 12 to 15 to 20 videos and pictures of what I was doing with that child. It's not a secret. My aim is not कि मैं अपनी coke की recipe जो है vault में छुपा के रख लूँ. No, my aim is to teach the parents who live with these children.
Absolutely.
To teach them what to do.
Bilkul.
Right?
And they can be integrated as fairly typical individuals into society.
No, they can be integrated as individuals that they are. And schools, Pakistan में भी ये चली हुई है, because ये जो आपके schools है ना, a lot of the I won't say that, but a lot of schools, to retain their status, have to have a quota of your special needs population. वो क्या करते हैं? Shadow teacher. A shadow teacher is an untrained, literally a glorified ayah who is just keeping your child alive on the premises of the school. And the child is not getting the support that the child needs. The school, the curriculum is not modified for the child. यहाँ पे तो टीचर ट्रेनिंग नहीं है. आप टीचर बन जाते हैं अपनी शादी के इंतजार में. आप जाके टीचर बन जाते हैं. आपने शादी अभी नहीं हुई तो आप टीचर बन गए. Other than that, आपके बच्चे छोटे हैं. You want to be obviously home at the same time. आप टीचिंग कर लेते हैं. यहाँ पे there needs to be and I keep hearing these rumors about a teacher certification college being established and things like that. And this makes me extremely sad to say this. I reached out to so many schools who claim that they are having courses, and I'm talking about big colleges in Pakistan. I reached out to them. I said, I am ABA. If you are doing a course in ABA, I will come and give you my time for free. Just let me talk to the students. Just do a casual question and answer session with the students. No, they did not get back to me. And then I realized the reason is I will make them all look incompetent. And I don't say this out of pride at all.
No, I know what you're saying.
I just, so people like me who come back to Pakistan with the mindset and the niyat of helping people here, we are so discouraged. Because there is a competition here. I am not in competition. I'm not in competition to open 20 centers. I'm not. My purpose is to help these parents and help these students. To give them a chance at a good life that everybody deserves.
Absolutely.
Right?
So guys, this discussion leads to multiple questions, and if you have questions, please post them in the comment section. Medication for students with autism, and
there is no medication.
There's no medication. And we were talking about medication that is given to students.
It is given because sometimes with autism, with ASD, we see ADHD, we see ADD, we see ADD, we see pica, we see other
things
challenges.
that lead to excessive intake, weight gain, all of that.
So the medication that these children get is usually
I don't want to go there. I want people to ask now.
Oh, sorry.
Otherwise, ये कभी खत्म ही नहीं होगी conversation. I don't want people to ask questions what they're interested in. So medication. Then hitting puberty. For students with autism, you know, how to deal with your sexuality if you're on the spectrum. Again, how family treats you, how family reacts to you, what is the norm, is there a norm, whatever. There are so many questions I'm sure people have. So I'm going to request you to go back to the video once it's published and once people start asking questions, because I feel that Pakistan mein to parents with children who are on the spectrum are at a massive loss because है ही कुछ नहीं.
They are.
System ही integrate नहीं करने देता आपको. System oppose करता है और बहुत से obstacles हैं. बाहर of course जो लोग रह रहे हैं उनको फिर भी they have access to better systems, but even they would have a lot of questions.
Oh yeah, and people in Pakistan and generally people with special ed students want a quick fix. Please remember there is no quick fix. ABA takes time, but ABA is permanent. The changes that we see in the child's behavior tend to last.
I'm sure that's reassuring.
It is. And then we see them generalize from the learning environment to the natural environment. Because that's what ABA is based on. The teaching strategies of ABA are designed like that. Lekin there is no quick fix. This is pretty much a lifelong thing. But that doesn't mean that there's no hope. There is hope. And anytime that, you know, something like this is identified, there are people who capitalize, like you have your war profiteers. There are people who capitalize on the parents' vulnerability as well by touting therapies that are not scientifically research-based. Those are not therapies. Those can just be activities and hobbies, but they are not therapies.
So guys, reach out and read. सबसे जरूरी चीज़, educate yourself.
Remember, .gov or .org on your website.
And any questions you have for Meher, she's here. She's going to answer on the comment section. And like we said, we could go on talking about this forever and ever.
I could go on.
It seems like a challenge, but I'm so proud of you that you took this field. And I've seen this has been a passion with you. Like, for so many years. It's like,
because, you know, this is what I say.
It requires a lot of energy.
Teaching, you have to be passionate about teaching. Don't get into teaching for the sake of teaching.
Exactly.
You have to be passionate.
But I've seen you singing and dancing with your students. Oh, and, you know, it's like a lot of music and a lot of instruments. And
I went fishing with one of my students who loved fishing. So remember we talked about the obsessions with things. And his one obsession was fishing, and the second obsession was Harry Potter. And I was telling you before that I took all his learning and turned it into these two favorite topics. So his math problems, I would sit there and I would turn them into Harry had 15 wands and Hermione did this and what's, you know. I taught him, we taught him what he needed to. Yes, absolutely. Conversation, the nuances of conversation. I taught him talking about fishing. I taught him that, okay, you know, now my turn to talk, now your turn to talk. Now we're going to change the topic. बजाय इसके कि मैं उसको पेपर पेंसिल डेस्क पे बैठ के समझाती, I took topics that were of interest to him and turned those around into learning opportunities for him. It is a lot of work. And that's why I keep saying it takes supervision, it takes practice. You cannot do a course in 4 days and think that you are ready. You will be doing and you are. People who are doing that are doing a disservice to this community. And this community is already struggling. Already struggling.
Absolutely.
Right? So don't make it harder for them.
Don't make it harder for them, guys. And
parents, educate yourselves.
Educate yourself. Absolutely. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you all for tuning in. And please send questions and we will try to answer as many as possible. And if this works for you guys, we could even do a live session. Maybe on a specified topic, subject, because the purpose is to help people help themselves. Right. And yeah, thanks, Meher.
All right, thank you.